September is only a month away, barely a month away. You're looking at your enrollment at this moment and you're saying to yourself, how am I going to be able to cover my fixed expenses? That has happened to me. I'm looking at my enrollment. I already see the teachers that I have committed to, and I'm saying to myself, how am I going to cover my expenses with the current enrollment that I have at this time? Maybe you're that director waiting for the government to pay you for contracts that have been approved, services that have been rendered, and yet you've been living off your credit cards, wondering, is this the right time for me to open my childcare program? Maybe you're like one of my tenants who is moving her group family daycare from the house she is currently renting, and she rented my house to open a group family daycare last November. And it has been over 7 months, and she still hasn't had an inspection. She's carrying 2 properties, waiting for the final approval. Do you go? Do you stop? You're midway through. What do you do? How do you survive your enrollment shortfall? Welcome to Decoding the Childcare Business. My name is Zuleika Hines. I ran 4 childcare programs in 2 different states, in 4 different jurisdictions, and yet these shortfalls happened to me. Growing my program to over $2.6 million a year, I saw the landscape as it was happening, and I was able to understand what I needed to do to be able to find my strategic decision-making process in order to be able to survive the ebbs and flows that happens in our industry. It's not just about cost. It's not just about time. It's about that personal toll that this takes on you mentally and physically as you grapple with the process of running, maintaining, and sustaining your own childcare program. Because being a director is lonely, and these conversations serve us to understand that you are not alone. These issues that we face happens to all of us, whether we have a center-based program that appears to be running at full capacity or a family daycare program with only 6 children. These issues, if you haven't confronted them, you will, because there are things beyond your control that you cannot even foresee. And I'm coming to you with 22 years so you can be prepared for the unexpected and have clear tools in place to succeed. Welcome to Decoding the Childcare Business. Our topic today is going to discuss surviving your enrollment shortfall. What to do before an enrollment cliff becomes a cash crisis. Do not wait for a low enrollment problem to become a payroll emergency. Position your program while there's still room to act. And we're going to talk about exactly how to do that. The important disclaimer, folks, important disclaimer. The information provided in this presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, financial, accounting, or investment advice. Every childcare program, tuition, staffing, license, debt, and cost structure is different. Please consult a qualified accountant, financial advisor, licensing specialist, and attorney before making business decisions or changing your agreement. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Benjamin Franklin. Before I go on, I want to share something very important with you. I am starting a masterclass, and I need you to not only sign up to the masterclass, so you will be the first to know. I need you to also like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. You see, it's not only about directors understanding the journey that we must take in order to be profitable, but I honestly feel the more families, parents, policymakers know about our personal struggle, the clearer the path to supporting and collaboration will be available to us all. But it's important for us to share this information. Why? Because a lot of times these conversations are happening in a vacuum. Directors talking to directors, policymakers talking to families, looking at the landscape, saying that there's not enough childcare providers, saying that the cost is too high. And these different conversations do not fully grasp the extent of the burden that we carry, not understanding our financial constraint to child-to-staff ratio, the demand on our staff in terms of requirements, education, training, in addition to the work that they have to do every day, and why so many directors feel burned out. If you're one of them, come join this masterclass. Come put your name on the wait list. These experiences that I bring to you are not only founded on education, pedagogy, business development, but it's also founded on the 22 years that I built, grew, and expanded my program. So please join the masterclass waiting list. Do that today. Let me know that you're interested. It's going to be live. It's going to be on a different platform to develop a community. I'm excited. I'm developing it right now. Join the wait list. I have the QR code on the top of the screen. Look above here or here. I'm not sure where I'm going to put it on the video once I edit it. Also, let me know what are your pain points so I can address them in the conversation. It's going to be a small cohort of us, and I just cannot wait to meet you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this journey with me and for helping me reach 3,000 subscribers. Now back to the conversation today on surviving the enrollment cliff. Folks, we've all been there. We're full, but why I can't breathe. Oh my God, have you been there? I walk down the hall and I see children in every room. The wait list has names on it. So why am I transferring personal money just to cover payroll this week? How about not taking a payroll at all? That's been me when I started my programs. I didn't even take a payroll for at least a year, even though I had 600 people on the waiting list. And you will say, Ms. Zuleika, you had people on the waiting list and you were feeling that stressed? Yes. You know why? When I first built my schools, I built it with 4 classrooms, but I only opened 2 classrooms, even though I had people on the waiting list. And the reason why I only opened 2 classrooms is I was never in a classroom before, except for my volunteer work that I did. And it was brief, and I did it in order to understand whether or not this field was for me. And although I come from parents of educators, I never taught in a classroom. In that practical sense, I was not a teacher. I did not open my childcare program from the pathway of growing in a childcare program as a teacher, educator, director, and then starting my school. I did it completely unconventional. So I needed to give myself time to understand how to manage a team. That's the other thing. I never had staff under me. I never managed a team before. I've been managed, but I never managed a team. So I had to learn how to manage a team. I had to hire consultants to help me understand what I didn't know. My father left the public school system. He retired and he came into my school and helped me understand the processes, how to create systems for education. So I was needing a lot of support and handholding my first couple of years because I never taught or worked in a school setting for a period of time to feel confident in running my own school. So even though I had people on the waiting list, I had 2 classrooms empty while I was fine-tuning my first 2 classrooms. And the waiting list did not stop. Every year after that, my waiting list was so long that people were adding their names to my waiting list before they were pregnant or as soon as they knew they were pregnant. So the illusion of being full is a real situation. The enrollment mix, too many part-time slots or discounted rates blocking full-time revenue. When I started my program, I had 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week, and 4 days a week. And the initial mistake that I did is that I had parents select whatever 3 days they wanted, whatever 4 days they wanted. I found myself having a lot of openings for a Monday or a lot of openings for a Friday. But parents who wanted a 3-day week did not want Monday, Wednesday. So although I had an appearance of a full classroom, let's say on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursday, I was at 40 or 50% capacity on Mondays and Fridays. And that's real because my full-time staff was full-time. Their fixed expenses did not vary whether I had a 40% capacity on Mondays or whether I had a 50% capacity on Fridays. I also had delayed starts by giving siblings priority. So that meant that a sibling would have the opportunity to enroll into the program. First priority, I like to get families together, but sometimes the sibling would not start till November. Sometimes they would say they would want to start in November and then they won't start till January. And I would go ahead out of courtesy, hold a contract for the parent. I had parents, especially in the infant classroom, that would delay their start date, right? 2 to 3 months. The parents thought they wanted to enroll 2 months after maternity leave, and then decided that their grandmother was going to come and take care of the baby, or their father was going to stay home through maternity leave because they couldn't leave that child in a center or a family group daycare at that point. Then that enrollment that I thought was going to start in October got moved all the way to February. And folks, that created a mayhem for me financially, but it was something that I had to account for. The delay starts. Then there's the fixed cost. Rent, insurance, and utilities do not pause while you wait for enrollment to ramp up. And that's a bit of the disconnect that many families and government agencies and just overall conversations are not really addressing. That when you have a group family daycare or center-based program, families appear to be on the waiting list, appear to want to start at a fixed date, but they decide to either extend their maternity leave or have another family member come and stay with the child. Or they were able to work something out with their work where they can work 3 days from home and 2 days in the office. And after COVID, that happened more and more frequently. So you have to think for yourself, how many active paying children does my program actually need to cover this month's expenses? How many active paying children does my program actually need to cover this month's expenses? An enrollment cliff is a cash flow problem. Empty seats hurt, but the bigger risk is when the cash that is coming in cannot meet the current obligation, you have an enrollment cliff. When the cash coming in cannot meet the current obligation, that's when you have an enrollment cliff. When your fixed costs do not pause. What are your fixed costs that do not pause? Your rent, your insurance for the school, your workers' compensation expense, your utilities, software, subscriptions, whether to run your childcare program, whether it's running your cameras, whether it's running your phone, your Spotify, all those subscriptions just doesn't stop. And then you have to consider that teacher, the minimum staff that you need to run the program, because you need at least a minimum staff to be viable. In some states, to even have a license. So in order for your license to be renewed or to even get an initial license, you need to make sure that you have at least that qualified staff to be able to receive and accept new enrollments or carry out the existing enrollment. Forecast the shortfall. A true forecast must show the exact month in which the cash shortfall begins, not just the day the classroom becomes full. Identifying the timing of the cliff allows you to make strategic decisions before it's too late. And that was so important for me. I would know how much cash was coming in that particular month. And for an infant program that I had, let's say 3 or 4 infants rolling in, I would be really cautious on how I hire my staff, my part-time staff and my full-time staff. Granted, I needed a full-time staff for the current group of children if I'm in a center-based program that required an infant teacher there. But if I'm in a group family daycare, I was very careful on when I would go ahead and bring on a part-time teacher to help support the shift if I do get an increase in enrollment. So you look at September, October, November, and December, and you think to yourself, what is my month where I would experience a shortfall? Granted, we should already be familiar with this because in the summer, it's common for us to experience a shortfall. But it's important for you to know when are you going to be at the best enrollment during the school year where you can use that time to put money away to cover your fixed costs? And when will the shortfall come and how would you mitigate that? Meaning, how would you average that out? Find your enrollment floor. So Ms. Zuleika, how do I find my enrollment floor? I'm not really good at math. How do I find my enrollment floor? This is what I have for you. Your enrollment floor will be your monthly cash that you need and your average net monthly revenue per enrolled child. And I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like. You're going to use actual, not assumptions, and you're going to review it with a professional. You'll use your actual enrollment mix and net tuition collected. Do not assume full capacity average. The number of children needed changes drastically if your mix skews towards subsidized care, discounted rates, or part-time schedule. You must review this with a professional. This working figure should be reviewed with a qualified financial professional. What are your variable costs, subsidies, discounts, payment timing, and age group? But I also created the Childcare Intelligence System tool. You can just plug in this information and it will calculate for you, which is amazing. It takes a lot of the guesswork out and you'll be able to know if you're landing correctly or if you need more support or more funding to cover those months that you're lower than you were expecting. Does that make sense? So here's an example of what this looks like. This is something that I used personally before I created the Childcare Intelligence System tool. For the Childcare Intelligence System tool, I have a QR code on the right-hand side. take a look. I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like. Now here, working management calculation, what is your enrollment floor? And the enrollment floor is going to really talk about the number of children, the minimum number of children that you need to cover your fixed costs. And I use this a lot. I use this to determine what was the number of children that I needed to cover all of my expenses at that moment, like how many teachers I needed. I would use this to calculate how many children cover rent. So I would know exactly the rent cost for that. And rent means rent and insurance. And I would use this to divide how many children I need to cover my staff costs. If you look at your monthly staff divided by your average monthly tuition, you would know that you need this amount of children to cover your monthly rent. By having this calculation, which will also be included in the Childcare Intelligence System tool, you'll be able to understand how to look at your program clearly. So in this particular slide, I'm going to show you how to find your enrollment floor. When you look at your enrollment floor, it means how many children, what are the minimum number of children you should really have enrolled in order to meet your fixed cost. And so your monthly cash needed. So we're talking about your rent, your loan, your insurance, your utility, your minimum staff payroll, your software subscriptions, right? And then we're going to talk about the average net monthly revenue per enrolled child. Now, what is the average net monthly revenue per enrolled child? If you have, let's say, 15 children and you're making, let's say you have 5 children to make it easier, and your total monthly enrollment is $25,000. So 5 children divided by 25 will be $5,000. So your average net monthly revenue per enrolled child will be $5,000. In this particular case, this is the example. I'm giving you 2 scenarios because I found that the minimum full-time children equivalent worked for me, but there's also the enrollment floor. If your fixed costs are $6,000 and your children average revenue per enrolled child is $1,857. So example, 14 children, $26,000 a month gives you an average of $1,857 a month per child. Does that make sense? You have 14 children. All of their tuition combined, you combined all their tuition, how much all 14 children pay you. Take all their names that you have enrolled, and next to their names, put how much they pay you a month for tuition. Then you add up the whole column and you divide it by 14. So if it came to $26,000 in this example, those 14 children divided by the $26,000 will give you $1,857. You see that here? So your fixed expenses are $6,000. You divide it by $1,857. Your minimum amount of children that you need to have will be 3.23 or 3.5, which means 3 full-times and half part-time to equal what you would pay for your fixed expenses. This does not mean your own payroll or supplies or materials. This does not include part-time teachers unless it's essential in the salary. This is what is the minimum that you need to pay for those expenses that come up every month that you cannot do without, that you cannot postpone. They must be paid. They're consistent. There's a reason why I'm not putting credit cards here. I'm not putting other types of payments that you may have, subscriptions that you may have, because those things can be canceled, like Spotify, or you decide to cancel Netflix, or you decide to cancel Hulu. Those are nice to have, but quite frankly, they're optional. These are what is the bare minimum that I need to generate every month. In this example, let's say $6,000. And then I went ahead and I divided it by the average net monthly revenue per enrolled child. And the second way to do it is your minimum full-time equivalent. What I do is that I go ahead and include my full-time children equivalent. What is my full-time children and what's my part-time children? So if I have a total of 14 children, because if I add my full-time and my part-time, that creates 6 children. And granted, your part-time and your full-time may be a different rate. So you just want to add what all of your capacity would be that is enrolled for that particular classroom. So let's say that classroom is enrolled for 26 children, for 14 children again in this example. You divide it by 6,000 it's going to give you a higher amount of children you need to cover your enrollment. Because full-time equivalent is really looking, in this example, what is your total part-time and full-time? What is your total part-time AM or PM plus your full-time? An AM and a PM will be a full-timer in terms of that slot, because you cannot duplicate how many children are there because you have a classroom capacity. That means how many children you can have at any one time. And then you divide that by 6,000, which is your fixed cost, and you come up with a calculation of 4.33 children. A full-time equivalent, or the average net monthly revenue per enrolled child. It's a guide of what is the minimum number of children you need to be enrolled every month in order for you to meet your financial obligations that are fixed. Once you have that information, you'll be able to calculate per child how many children you need enrolled to cover medical coverage, cover training, cover extracurricular activities like a music teacher or a puppet show teacher. Once you start understanding what your floor is, you can build from there. Does that make sense? It's important to know your floor because your numbers are a warning to you. Look for these 4 signals before a shortfall becomes a crisis. Why are we doing this exercise? We want to understand what is the minimum amount of children we need to have enrolled. When do we enter the yellow zone or the red zone, which is the crisis zone? When are we in the green? So when you have a good sense of how many children you need to have enrolled, then you also have a sense about staffing, how to position yourself, how to include a full-time versus a part-time. And it will help you make better decisions even in how you hire a part-time teacher, because you may want to hire a part-time teacher that may want to become full-time later on. Or you may want to hire a part-time teacher that can only work part-times in the evening, and that's where your need is the most, right? And so you kind of work with one another. Project monthly enrollment revenue is lower than the actual cash required to cover obligations for the month. If your revenue required is less than your cash, you are starting to look at how can I mitigate that? Do I need to increase my marketing in Facebook? Do I need to offer incentive like this month we're waiving application fees? Would you be able to offer other incentives if you provide pickup and drop off? If you enroll your child for a minimum of a year, you will get free pickup and drop off with your service. What other programs or what other incentives can you implement in your program that would allow you to generate more interest in order to increase capacity? Delay start dates. Expected start dates for new families that keep moving while your fixed expenses remain due immediately needs to have a cutoff date. You would allow a family to delay their start date how many times? That might be a way for you to minimize the obligation of maintaining that family. Let's say that the family, you decide, well, you are able to enroll in the program as an infant. I am going to give you the opportunity to do 1 or 2 or all of the following. You could delay your start by 1 month without losing your deposit. You can delay your start up to 30 days, or you can delay your start up to 60 days without losing your deposit. However, beyond that, you will lose your deposit. However, if you decide to re-enroll during our normal course of enrollment period, I will waive the deposit at that time. You see what I mean? Finding ways to limit parents delaying it over and over and over again. Another option, you could say, I will allow you to delay it only one time. Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, you only get one time delay. And it's going to be based on availability, meaning that I will allow you to delay your enrollment up to this for 3 or 6 months. But then it's going to be also dependent on availability. And if it's not available at your desired time, I will let you know the next availability without losing your deposit. However, your deposit is non-refundable because of the administrative cost that is involved in managing your transition and ensuring that we are able to support you when you decide to come and join us. So a delayed start is not a bad thing. It's a great tool. It's attractive for families and infants, but you must put in parameters, but also incentivize them to want to re-enroll with you when they're ready to take the next step. Draining cash reserves. This is a warning. The cash reserve is being used to fund normal day-to-day operations without a defined, actionable recovery plan. If you start draining your cash reserves, then you start draining your credit cards, your savings, then what do you have for you to mitigate emergencies? How would you be able to then apply for emergency loan, obtain a grant for your program, be considered viable for business opportunities that do come up with certain community financial banks? And we talked about funding opportunities on our other YouTube podcast. But when you look at draining your cash reserve, folks, that's a huge warning. Is this business even for you? Because if you are draining your cash reserves and you're making less than the minimum wage, and you're doing this now for 3, 4, 5 months, then you really need to reconsider your position in this place. Maybe you need to go work for someone else, become an executive director, have an evening job after hours. Because some of you may think, well, my husband pays all the bills or my partner pays all the bills. It's still a drain on the household. It's still a drain on the family. It's still a drain on your children. So if you're draining your reserves and you're putting all that you have into it, but you have nothing to back you up in case of an emergency, you're not doing anybody a service. You're doing yourself and everyone else a disservice. So please, do you have a plan in place to recover the money that you are continuously putting into your business personally? And what is the outcome? How are you going to recover from that? That was key for me. It was a way for me to think about, do I grow my school? Do I sell my school? Do I close a classroom? Do I close a program? Do I consolidate? And I will take you through that on another episode, my thought process. We'll talk more about it in the masterclass, about how I made these decisions, what were pain points for me to make these decisions, and how you should look at yourself financially. And together, I don't want you to feel guilty. You're not a failure. You tried something, but you have to know when to step out and how to step out so you can continue to be financially viable, which is a big calling for me on this podcast for you. The rising costs per child. The cost per active child is rising because the program is carrying staffing and capacity that enrollment has not yet funding. So when you do that, the cost per child goes up, right? Because you're creating activities, you're creating programs that you have no funds for. You're carrying a really high-paying staff that's been with you for 15 years, but her credentials have not increased. And so you cannot move her to the next age group because she doesn't meet the credentials. Sometimes we have to look at our own staffing. Sometimes keeping a staff for a long time because they've been with you 10 or 15 years, but they have done nothing to improve themselves, to get their credentials, to really become a partner with you in the business. Maybe a situation that you have to reevaluate because they're at the top of their salary. Maybe you need to start looking at teachers and hiring an assistant teacher that has the credentials, that ultimately wants to be promoted, that can step in when you look at rebalancing your program. Does that make sense? It's a hard call to make, but as a director, it's a lonely job, but it's a job that so many people depend on us, both the teachers and the families and our own community. So you have to make these hard calls. Position the program now. Do not wait until it's crisis mode. I personally remember in January, February, when I was doing my re-enrollment for the following year, I had a group of parents that came together and decided to leave the program that were already with me 3 years. Decided to leave the program to go to a free program, a free preschool program, because now there was no cap on how much they could make. So these parents were in middle class corporate America, making over $200,000 a year. They saw the opportunity to get free childcare through the Abbott program in New Jersey and left me collectively. Parents that had verbally committed to me to graduate with the program. That was a shocker. I think all the blood ran out of my face. I was so nervous. I had to take a deep breath. I had to reevaluate my situation. I had to look at the classroom and rebalance the classroom age groups. And that is where not every state is the same. In New Jersey, I was able to repurpose a classroom in different age groups without having to go through a whole licensing review. Separate your costs. Distinguish your essential costs from your postponable, discretionary, or negotiable expenses immediately. Folks, Shopify is not a necessary subscription. You got YouTube, and YouTube is free, and they have a children's channel, and you can sign up for that. Set a decision calendar. Review enrollment, cash flow, expected start dates every single week. Determine who's coming in and who's not coming in, and who's coming out, who is being delayed. Determine also when you are above your floor and how many children above that floor. Let's say your floor is 4 children that you need to have to cover your fixed expenses, and you got 8 children enrolled. Take one of those children for savings for a rainy day. That tuition goes into a savings account for a rainy day. And they take another one of those children to prepay some of your utilities. That way you build a reserve in your electric bill, in your phone bill, in your security camera bill. So if you have a low summer or you have a low month, you can tap into that. Protect care quality. Maintain safety and licensing standards while avoiding decisions based only on optimism. So protect your quality. Your quality is what's going to bring your children in. It's going to bring parents in. Do not skip on quality. Do not skip on training. Maybe you won't be able to hire that consultant to do the training, but you may have a teacher that's seasoned there, that's been there for over 10 years. And that teacher is really good at curriculum, planning, organization. Leverage that teacher. Give her a bonus for doing a training and bring them together to work with each other to create these team groups to retain and maintain quality. And the other thing is, speak to your team. Let them know what's going on. Use one forecast. Ensure leadership, finance, and operations are all rely on a single forecast and decision source. Do not jump into full-time equivalent to average monthly tuition. Keep one, stick to one, and use one to help determine your decision-making process. By the way, hope is not a strategy. I hope that this parent is going to sign their siblings because they love my program. They've been there for 3 years. Do not put your finger on that. That parent may decide to have the child and move to another town. That parent may decide to stay home for the year because they felt they missed too much of their first child's life. There are many different reasons why parents may change their mind. You cannot rely on a parent's word that they're going to come to you next year. You got to assume that what your enrollment is those people who signed the contract. Position your program when there's still room to act. The earlier that you are realistic about your numbers, the better you're going to be at mitigating those challenges that eventually are going to come. And I want to thank you for joining me on this deep dive of enrollment shortfalls and the crisis to avoid. I want to encourage you to join the masterclass. Here we're going to go deeper. It's a 4 to 6 week intensive program. It's private and live with Q&A calls and exclusive workbooks. You're going to be able to master enrollment strategies, do financial modeling, master the Childcare intelligence system, and discuss expansion and growth. Here I have the QR code as well as the link directly on basiclearning.com/masterclass. Join the waitlist now because, again, it's an exclusive offer. We're going to be intimate and small, and it's a way for us to have a conversation and dig deeper into that enrollment process, but as well as the journey of opening your own childcare business while being financially successful. I want to take a moment to thank you for joining me in this conversation. Our next talk is going to be staffing when enrollment is not certain, so that way you know what to do before you hire from hope and cut from fear. Learn how to staff around the enrollment you have, the enrollment you can verify, and the care children still deserve. Thank you for joining me at Decoding the Childcare Business. My name is Zuleika Hines, and I cannot wait to meet you.